We are very pleased to start the new year with everybody. We thank you all for being here, taking the time to join us, for reading, for commenting, favoriting, all that stuff. It's really been a pleasure. Crystal and I had an amazing first year on the site. For me, it was November to November. She had been on a little sooner than that. But really, it's been a pleasure, and we've just so enjoyed having y'all around. And, it's been fun. So we're hoping 2016 is going to be another super productive year. We've got way too much planned and not enough hours in the day. But we'll get there. We'll get things coming out, and everybody will be hopefully happy with it. All right. Let's see here. We'll get started with our questions. As always, if you want to discuss, you can discuss in general. If you have a question, please ask a question in question. That's kind of how that works. Okay, so we'll start at the top here. Lord Legion is curious as to how far I am into trials. That's an excellent question. Now, as far as actual written word into trials, I'm not very far at all. I've been doing a lot of planning for trials, but the magic hasn't struck me yet on that one. I'm actually having too much fun with Sunny, especially after such a difficult story with writing secrets and the story I was trying to tell. It was kind of tough to go right into that, kind of on a low. So I have written the epilogue that will lead us into trials, which is available kind of on the drafts right now. But I've written the epilogue. I've written some of the first chapter. Now, we have a lot of detail on what's going to happen, and that part is really well hammered out, at least as far as the first 2 acts go. I'm trying something, again, different with Trials. Trials is going to basically be not necessarily the end for Silent Night, but I'm also not saying that it's not the end for Silent Night. But Trials will resolve everything from Memoirs and Secrets. It may resolve Silent Night. I'm not saying whether it does or not, but it might. And will occur in 3 acts, 3 separate acts that are tied together, but are also independent, if that makes any sense. So there'll be 3 acts, which will end up basically being tying all into Trials, which will resolve Trials, which will also resolve the trilogy of Memoir Secrets Trials. And that will be the end of that. So as far as how far I've written, not very far as far as draft goes, but as far as planning, we are pretty well planned through the end. Let's just say that. All right. Next question is for Crystal. Did you plan to have Rosby turn out to be really young, or was it this would be a great twist halfway through?
Ha ha. So Rosby's kind of an interesting story.
That was an interesting story.
It was so interesting, she disconnected herself and will return shortly. All right, she's back.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. I have no idea what I just did. So Rosby is a very, very dear friend of mine, and originally we included him just kind of as a fun little cameo. And Rosby is actually one of my best sounding boards for when I'm planning out the next chapters or what the next plotline is going to be, because he's not a super pony person, so he's very great for just looking at things very objectively. And we kept coming up with like fun little ideas of how to develop Rosby. And so he was pretty much halfway kind of planned, halfway kind of just winged as we came up with ideas. But the funny thing about the age specifically was Rosby had no idea the age of our own characters. So when he found out that they were older, he was like, oh, this is awkward. I thought they were like little young things. So just kind of to keep that fun, we decided to make him younger. He just looks an X mature. It just kind of seemed funnier. So yeah, I guess this would be a great twist / this would be kind of funny.
Yeah, when Rosby first appears in Memoirs before he appears in anything else, right? That was the first one when he's in when he's in the Spearhead. So when he's in the Spearhead and when I wrote him, he was not young, that for sure. So actually, when I was working on the second edition, I sort of put some hints that he was to kind of match up to the minifix, but that was one of those things that did change later, but not in a bad way. It was just kind of fun.
And the minific that I was supposed to do yesterday, but I just got busy with work, and I was supposed to do today, but I forgot, is the part 2 of the little day in the life of Rosby, which actually is Rosby's side of the bar, which should hopefully be funny.
Hopefully so. All right, next question. What were your favorite scenes to write to both of us? So Crystal first.
By very much so, the Country Roads, that chapter, that whole date. I just loved it. I was listening to the actual Country Road song. I was thinking of all these happy things. It was just such a fun, relaxed, laid-back chapter that I really enjoyed writing it.
For me, I don't have a specific favorite scene, but there are certain things when I write them that I just know. So the end of Secrets is one example. Crystal, the way Crystal reacted, I wrote that. It just kind of came to me. And I wrote that scene when I wasn't halfway through the draft for Secrets, if that kind of puts it into perspective. And I wrote it, and I gave it to Crystal, and I was like, what do you think of this? And did you say, what was it? You had chills? What was your response?
It actually did give me chills, yes.
Yeah. So, like, occasionally I'll hit on things, and when I do, to me, to her, it's just a big thing. So that was one of them. The end of Secrets, where Crystal gives him a piece of her mind. I loved that. That was huge for me. I like a lot of the scenes with Farrell, because if you've been in the live chat before or you talk to me, I will tell you this. Everything Farrell says is incredibly agonized over. Like, I don't agonize over all dialogue, which sometimes gets me into trouble. I'm not going to lie. Because some people, they'll take it and be very thoughtful about it. And they're like, oh, this is so clever. You clearly meant this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, I am not nearly as smart as you think I am. But with Farrell, I am. And I will say Farrell, again, the main goal for my stories, and particularly also for Farrell, is when you're done with trials, if you go back through, you will see things, not even just because I'm quote unquote putting them in for the second edition, because I'm not really. I'm just talking about even the original drafts and from Farrell. If you look through them, you'll go, oh, wow, how was that not obvious? And again, especially my favorite one that I will give is Farrell tells you the name of the third story midway through Secrets. She's pretty sneaky like that. So I really like writing Farrell scenes. I like writing Runic scenes, because usually I'll just come up with something ridiculous. And after talking with Runic for a little while, or some combination of it both. And yeah, I like writing Runic scenes a lot. Okie dokie. Alrighty. Now, let's see here. Next question for both of us. Can any of your characters play the clarinet? Crystal first.
Maybe Xerox.
Maybe Xerox. As far as the clarinet goes, no. I like to think that Iridescence has some sort of musical training, like that would be something her parents insist on, but as a unicorn, I kind of saw it more like a violin or a string instrument. Obviously, Silent Night and Winter Spear didn't have time for that sort of thing. They weren't allowed. I also like to imagine that Azurite plays the kazoo and is really good at it. And maybe the harmonica, and like people wouldn't expect it, but like secretly she and Pink Pony have little jam sessions. That sounds something legitimate. Okie dokie, to both of us. Who is your favorite of the others' OCs? Meaning, Crystal, who is your favorite OC of mine?
It's a good question. Honestly, I really like Radiant Orchid.
Yeah, Orchid's fun.
I think I just really like mom characters. They're just so cute.
It's kind of funny that she said that. I like Sunbeam. Personally, I like Sunbeam better than anybody, because again, sometimes it's easier to like the characters that aren't on screen as much, but Sunbeam is by far my favorite.
Thank you, Sugarpuff.
Let's see, Ansel, approximately how people got wrecked throughout the Memoir series. A lot. It's been interesting watching my numbers and favorites and downvotes and everything through the series as I've kind of done things. We've had I've had a lot of churn between Memoirs and Secrets, because they're very, very different stories, and I wanted to try something very different. So I lost some readers pretty quickly, and I've had some that have stayed. And then I've also had a big switch of just, maybe some people lost interest. Some folks that I'm used to seeing commenting just stopped, and then they're not on the site anymore or whatever. But I'd say some people have been quite upset and have taken off, so that is the thing. Next up to both of us. Are there any characters you wish you hadn't written? Oh, how many people died throughout Memoirs? I'm sorry. I misunderstood completely. Thankfully, to the best of my knowledge, very few real people died because of my book. There were several. Well, at least one person thinks that's fun. I know he does. That was the joke. Basically, not a lot that are obvious. So the key ones that actually die are Lavender dies, obviously, then 2 others on the House Guard. Stratus Knight dies. You lost 7 Palace Guards, and there's a few others, but not too terribly many. But the one of the things that I'm trying to portray and not doing it very successfully, I think, is the time that we're in right now is extraordinary. You've had thousands of years of peace since between when the Alicorns were murdered and now. Almost nothing has happened, and it's certainly nothing that regular ponies would see on a daily basis. And so Canterlot being attacked with giant cockatrices and Nightmare Moon and coming back and all this crazy stuff. It's supposed to be a crazy time frame. And that's kind of what I'm trying to portray, now to the point where things have been pushed and pushed and pushed, and now we have a war. So that's not the answer to your question, but a decent amount of ponies and certainly more than usual. I'm glad everyone was amused. That was the goal. Okay, next question. Crystal Ansel. Also, I just want to tell y'all something that will make you laugh that was really cute. When I was doing that, and instead of her just interrupting and trying to get my attention, she raised her hand like she was in school for me to call on her.
I was waiting my turn patiently.
Okay. Crystal and Ansel, are there any characters you wish you hadn't wrote? And Crystal, take it away.
I wish I hadn't picked Cloud Kicker, and I honestly want it on record since I know, Seth, you're recording this. I have absolutely nothing against the winning verse. This is not personal. This is not universe to universe combat. There's no ships fighting going on here. It's just trying to write my own character or my own interpretation of this character and then getting like 5 comments about it's not what you want when you introduce new characters to hear about someone else's character.
That is a very fair question. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any that I flat out don't like or wish I hadn't included. I will say I've had to shoehorn some cameos because of cameo calls, and I don't love them, and that they kind of break the narrative, but at the same time, I'm very, very big on interacting with fans, and I think it's okay if the story takes a hit every now and then to do something for the fans. And that's not any way blaming at anybody here. Please don't take it that way. I just more mean there are some shoehorned cameos that feel like they're shoehorned cameos. And I wish I could have, worked a better way or that the story worked better for them.
I can definitely say I ran into that as well. Yeah. Again, it's nothing personal against the people's OCs. It's just like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yes, it's a mistake that Crystal and I made that we didn't think through in our excitement to let the fans be a part and be in it. Just saying that you can submit anything you want. That was stupid. I mean, we're stupid. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, it was so much arrogance that we just thought we could make anything work. And you know what, folks? You can't, okay? Some of them are great and they work just fine and it's an easy fit, and some of them aren't bad, but people have very interesting ideas about what they want and their, headcanon and their version of ponies, and it's fine and they're wonderful. But yeah, we can't fit everything. We're not that good. So, yeah. Let me think for just a second more about if there's anybody else. I like the villains I've written and the antagonists, personally. I think they're kind of fun. So, no, I think that's it for me. All right, let's see here. Next up. All right, Crystal. I know this one is on the minds of several people. Approximately, how many partners has Velvet had?
Oh, dear. Probably not actually as much as people seem to think. I wonder if I've misportrayed her or if I've worded things wrong. It's not that she's constantly going out. It's a semi-recurring thing that she just wants to get away, wants to break out of she works really hard at ballet. She works really hard at, working at her parents' bakery, and she works really hard at managing Crystal, as we can all attest is a third job in and of itself. And sometimes she just kind of needs to cut loose, and she does enjoy it. There's also that. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to count in my head. Y'all know I'm not good at math, but I mean, we've seen a few. Let's go with some. I think some is a good number.
She's definitely less promiscuous than people think.
Yes.
It's just that the story shows what's happening right now, but the list is smaller than you think, because Velvet tends to be a repeat customer.
Well,
is that fair? In some ways,
a repeat customer at Mayor Contraire, but not with the mayor herself.
Well, I think there's at least one mayor who would disagree.
I know. Oh, Dawn.
Oh, we're very Southern people.
But probably when I finish Velveteen Mask, I'll go back through and try to assess if I've misportrayed her.
All right, let's see here. Ansel, Crystal, will there be more romance between your two OCs? I assume you mean actual Crystal and Silent Night, Crystal Wishes and Silent Night. So yes, that's something we're very, very interested in, because they haven't had a chance to have a proper romance. Because again, in Secret, Silent Night wasn't in a point in his life where he could really do that. But you don't just give up on that, right? You have somebody you want to be with, you love them, and even though things aren't going right for you, you can't imagine giving them up. And Silent Night wasn't in his right mind. He wasn't in a state where he could really, truly get to know her more than he did in Memoirs. Because the problem is, and this wasn't portrayed super well, because I knew what I wanted to tell in Secrets, and I set it up in Memoirs, but I wanted it so subtle in Memoirs that you can just read Memoirs, have it end happily, and move on, and never have to read Secrets. But because I did that, it's not set up well in Secrets, so I have to kind of reestablish it. But the whole goal of Secrets is a look at Silent Night suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I've known some people that have had this. I've seen it when working with the military. It's pretty rough stuff. There's not a lot out there. These are a lot of people that end up homeless. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I was trying to kind of portray that, but I didn't want to overdo it in Memoirs, because again, I wanted Memoirs to end happy, so that you could just read Memoirs. And if you don't want to read Secrets and you just want to say, you know what, as far as I'm concerned, Memoirs is it and it's done, I'm okay with that. I'm actually very happy with that. And that's why it ended the way it did, which is exactly why Hopes ended the way it did. You can read, Wishes. You can read Wishes. It ends at the wedding. They're happy. And you don't have to read Secrets. You don't have to know what happens next. It doesn't matter. Crystal ended happily ever after the end. I need to stop. Oh, the romance. I was like, what the heck's the question? Okay. Now, this is something we were trying to establish, right? Crystal decided that she loves Silent Night. And that's kind of sometimes how love works, right? You make a decision, whether it's good for you, whether it's bad for you, whether it's obvious, whether it's not, whether all your friends around you are shaking your head. This phrase is, the heart wants what the heart wants. And if that's the case, then that's the case. So we are going to be doing some interesting relationship stuff in Trials. I'm not going to say it, but basically the two of them rushed to marriage in a way, because Silent Night was afraid of losing her, and Crystal was determined that she wasn't going to let him go. So it was almost like fear and stubbornness got them married. Now, that's not to mean that they can't have their romance, but that's the situation of their wedding in some ways. And, of course, there is a genuine love there, because, again, we see a bit of that in Memoirs, and we do see that when he can get a moment of clarity in Secrets before something beats him down again. There will be romance, though, in Trials. And see, the whole point that Secret sets up at the end is, Silent Night finally gets it. That's the whole thing. It's at the end of Secrets, when he can't do anything about it, he finally gets it. And that's going to be a theme that we take into Trials, is that he's given up so much for what he thought he was supposed to do. He gave up so much from his post-traumatic stress disorder. And then what really matters, well, now he's figured it out, but he's off to war. Any thoughts on that, Crystal?
You've pretty much covered everything. I'm really looking forward to how we plan to handle Secrets, haha. How we plan to handle their relationship, given what is everyone who's read Secrets at the end knows is coming. Things will be different, but in a good way, I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, for me, I don't want to write the same style every time. That's why Secrets is so different from Memoirs, because I wanted to try something new, try to grow as an author. Arguably, it didn't work as well. I'm okay with that. Trials is going to be different. I will say Trials is going to also deal with some things that are serious to me, which I don't go in for the glory and honor of war. I've just been around too many soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. It's a necessary evil sometimes, but I will say if anyone's expecting like a glorious war story, that's not going to be. It's going to be more of like the real stories, the things that I've been told and what I've seen, and that's kind of what we're going to look at. So that answers the very question of will there be more romance with a really ridiculously long answer. Okay, Ansel, will you ever make a day guard roster like you did with the night guard? Also, will Melody play a huge role in Sunny Days? Will I make the day guard roster? It depends on if I get really busy into day guard stuff. I'm not sure that I will. Because at that point I'm just coming up with OCs and putting names on it, even though they may never appear. There are the few that are important. I might throw a few on there. I might not. It really depends on how the second act of Sunny's story goes and how much that I focus on her guard stuff. But the truth of the matter is Sunny's story is focusing on Sunny, not the main plot of the universe. So I'm not going to tell Memoirs of a Royal Guard again as Memoirs of a Sunny Guard and just do her side of it. It's going to be her, Sunny's growing up is the first. Again, I think Sunny's Days is going to end up being 3 acts as well. Not to be related to Trials, but I think it is going to be. We're going to see young Sunny, then we're going to see early kind of middle memoir Sunny / secret Sunny. And then we're going to see Trial Sunny. And that's going to be the 3 points in her life that we're going to look at. But the middle portion is going to focus on memoirs and secrets as she's kind of building up her career, her interactions with Princess Celestia, her side of things with Azurite, because I just really want to show that. More about her relationship with Soren. So it's going to actually be more like a 3 of Hearts than it is memoirs. But will Melody play a huge role? Well, I don't like giving spoilers, but let's just say we are definitely not done with Melody. Also, no one seems to have caught this, but Melody also appears in Secrets of a Royal Guard. No one has put that together yet, but she appears by name in Secrets of a Royal Guard. So you guys can go root that out. Have fun with that. Crystal, do you plan on doing a multi-dimensional dystopian sci-fi MLP fanfic to get back to your roots?
Nope. But I will say that I do have a story that I'm working on. It's not multi-dimensional dystopian sci-fi, but I am going to be taking a stab at a more adventure type story.
Which we will talk a little bit about after the Q&A session, because that's kind of an announcement.
Did I spoil something? Was I not supposed to say something?
That's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fired.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Okie dokie. Ansel, will we see more Winterspear and Iridescence in Trials? Not in the first act that I'm aware of. The first act, we will probably not see them, and to be to the truth of the matter, they have been effectively written out for that act. And later in the other acts, we might see more of them. I kind of have to be vague here because I don't want to give anything away. I will say they will actually show up more in Hopes while I'm in the first act of Trials. And that isn't to say that they will show up a lot, but they will show up. Let's see here. Crystal Ansel, have you come under a lot of scrutiny for having a lot of LGBT characters in your fanfics? Do you plan on having any more? Crystal, you want to start there?
Oh, I do plan on having more. Oh, yes. I don't really think we've had too much. There's been some joking about how we have a disproportionate amount of mayors who like mayors, but I don't really think it's been too much of a serious pushback kind of thing. But I do look forward, and plus I have a few of the side characters that have been mentioned that are oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the name. Too many of those pizza ponies to remember the names out of my head. Fiddlesticks, Thin Crust, and Fiddlesticks. His name is now Fiddlesticks. I was trying to remember Crystal's uncle and his husband with the 2 adopted ponies. I was trying to remember their names.
We have to go to the list somewhere.
I know.
I'll cover this a little bit. We have had a little bit of questioning on it because also we've included some anti-LGBT stuff. So people have been kind of confused on the fact that we seem to be very pro, but some ponies are con, but all ponies generally are good. So one of the things that we're trying to portray is that ponies are a little more accepting than we are in this, but still there is some kind of gap. We do portray a lot, but there's sort of a joke about this between us. When we started the universe, the joke was kind of that we took some liberties and some things that we just thought were funny, even if they don't make sense, right? That they're not logical. When you watch this show, especially the first 2 seasons, there are like no stallions at all, like none. Now later on, they kind of figured out, oops, maybe we should show a decently split gender society. But really, if you watch early on, there's like no stallions. There's like no name stallions. They're all, and when you see them, they're slave labor, right? They're plowing fields or something. They're these stupid beast creatures that barely speak, that don't do good jobs. That's all they are, right? And so we thought that was hilarious because, again, we know who they're catering to, blah, blah, blah. But, the only male in the main cast is Spike. And then you have your secondary close main cast with, Big Mac and whatnot. But it's a mare-driven show. So our joke was that, like, our Equestria is like 70-30, and don't quote this as real numbers, but like 70-30 mares. So based on that alone, of course you're going to have more lesbians because there's not enough boys to go around. And, some sharing of boys. So, and the other thing was, a big thing for me is we're very pro. I mean, and there's just no way of saying it, but we also are very con of it being a huge in-your-face deal. So we try to portray them as just Silent Night is how we feel. It's the Winterspear says, I'm a lesbian. He says, okay, what does this have to do with anything? So you want to date a mare? Okay, I'll find you a mare, whatever. It's just a thing that is. And we did get a little flack, but not too much. And people don't seem to mind, pretty progressive, but there will be more. But also what was kind of funny for me was I became aware that the sheer small amount of relationships that I portray in my stories, because they're not focused heavily on that, do show a disproportionate, I guess, amount of LGBT relationships or alternative relationships when it comes to 3 ponies together. So, I had to put together some more, traditional, what a word, heterosexual, we'll go with, relationships. And I got some flack about not having that. But anyway, there's your random question and random answer. Mostly answer random. All right, Crystal and Ansel, who is your favorite character to write and why? Starting Crystal.
Why does it always start with me?
Because you're the lady, and ladies are first.
Sunbeam's really fun to write for, but I gotta say, any scene that involves red velvet, it's like butter. I don't even have to try to write those scenes. They write themselves. Red gurgled.
Yep. Oop, oop, oop. For me, let's see here. It's changed over time, but I like writing Silent Night when he's in a good mood and when he's got his dry humor. But really, writing Azurite's the most fun. She is crazy, and I never know exactly what's going to happen when I put her down. So, sometimes I plan things to go one way, but they don't, because it's just not how Azurite would act. Sometimes she is silly, sometimes she talks to things, sometimes she has a little breakdown. But I love writing Azurite because I just never know where it's going to go. I just can't fathom what she's going to do. I have my goals for her, but she very rarely listens. I also really like writing Dolly in Sunny's Days, because I knew Dolly was going to be important. I knew she was going to be important, but I didn't know how she was going to be. I had an idea for her, but I didn't know how she was going to be. And this wisecracking, older, tough love mare that she's turned into, I have fallen in love with. And it's such a good character for Sunny, and it's going to show kind of how Sunny became the way she did. And I'm really into Dolly right now. But Azurite's the best to write. I do enjoy writing Sunny because Sunny, one of the things that differentiates Sunny from anybody else is Sunny will just say what's on her mind, period, and that's it. And there's no filter, and she doesn't care, and she doesn't lie. And I think that's one of the reasons why she gets along with Princess Celestia. And we're going to see a little bit of that in Sunny's days, and I enjoy that very much. Ansel, how many partners has Sunny had? A lot. Certainly a lot more than Velvet. So as we see at the start, Sunny is younger, right? She's younger. And of course, Crystal and I have different views, not from each other, but we have a different view on pony ages than human ages and how that works out. But Sunny is very promiscuous, and she is proud of it. Not proud, but she has no shame in it, and she doesn't believe anybody should have any shame of her. So a lot, especially by that. Now, once she gets Soren and Azurite, that dramatically decreases to, almost nothing. And then once they go steady, then to nothing. But prior to that, lots. Because Sunny's argument was if somebody asked them out on a date, she would say yes. And if she decided she wanted to have sex with him, she would do it. And that's that. End of discussion. But it doesn't always work out because, she got shut down, recently in the story. Will we see Iridescence and Winterspear get married someday? Unfortunately, that borders on the spoiler, but, there was something set up at the end of Wishes that would insinuate that there was a change. Winterspear is terrified of rejection, and that's a big part of her character. She is very, very scared after Caramel Mint, where she thought that they were going to get married. She thought that that was the one, and she proposed, and basically Caramel laughed in her face. So even though things have been different with her and Iridescence, she still has that fear. But in Wishes, she made an effort to go for the bouquet. And as always, we try to do things for a reason. So you can base thoughts on that, but I don't know. Well, that's a lie. I do know, but I'm not saying. They will either get married or they won't. I promise it will be one of those two things. Ansel, Crystal, how did you get into fanfics and all? Crystal.
Okay, I hope y'all are sitting down because this is a story. I hold down Control to switch to to queue up, so I keep trying to switch channels and it's working. Okay, so the story of how we got into fanfics. I woke up one morning and sorry, you're messing me up. Stop talking. I woke up one morning and had the idea to do a Labyrinth My Little Pony crossover, and I did it, and I regret it. Oh my gosh. But then I started doing fan fiction, and I kind of was in the closet a little bit because I didn't want to admit to Ansel that I was doing it because I wasn't sure how he'd feel. And then when NaNoWriMo came around, he was like, we should write something together because that's what we've done in the past is write things together. And we tried a few different ideas, and eventually I was like, well, we do like ponies. And then Quill and Blade happened.
Yeah. She was afraid to tell me she was writing pony fan fiction at first. She was worried I would divorce her.
Wait, does that mean that I knew about this before Ansel?
Oh, yeah. I did. I had no idea that she was doing it. And I was aware of the site, but when I started the NaNoWriMo, I was like, I'm just going to put it on this site because no one's going to read it on... I think, did I start on Tumblr or did I start on I might have started on DeviantArt or Tumblr and basically there was no audience. And I don't need a huge audience. I just want to know at least like 3 people read it. That's really all. It's like, because then it just makes it worth doing it. Okay. So let's see here. Crystal, will you get back to your teen route and write over everything's stuff? I'm not sure I understand, Skarsnik.
Edgy stuff? Are we talking about my edgy years?
She's typing stuff. And she says y'all can just wait because she didn't queue.
Okay. The question was, how long did I keep my secret a secret? My account is member since 8th of April, and his is 17th November, so that's how long.
November the next year, right? No, never mind. You're right.
No, same year.
Same year.
Okay, so what am I answering?
I guess Skarsnik says it's not a real question, but it might be. If it is, Skarsnik, just drop it in again. All right. Crystal, Ansel, what sort of fiction do you like to read, pony or otherwise? Crystal?
I'm a big, I almost did it again, y'all. I almost clicked the thing. I am a big Piers Anthony fan. I really like fantasy, adventure-y kind of stories. Those are my usual jam. As far as fan fiction goes, unfortunately, I don't read as much as I should. As far as fan fiction goes, but pretty much slice of life.
For me, I don't read much. That's something, if you haven't heard before, I'm dyslexic and I read very, very slowly, and it's frustrating for me to get into anything. It takes a lot of effort, and it's one of those things where it would get easier if I would do it more, but it's a struggle, right? It's a real struggle, and it takes me a lot to get started, but once I get started, I'm okay. But it's a very slow process for me to read anything, which is why I try to read, some of our friends and Patreon's stuff first, but it's slow. But when I do read, which is not very much, I read a lot of Dresden Files. That's by far my favorite thing to be reading. That's influenced my writing style a lot. I liked the extended universe for Star Wars, some of it. I did a lot of that. That really didn't influence my writing at all, but I liked it. Dragonlance was very pivotal for me. That was the first novel I ever finished. The original Chronicles, the first one. That was the first thing that's been an influence on me in my storytelling for a very, very long time. But I don't actually read a lot. I get a lot of my influence from cartoons and from role-playing games and having been a dungeon master and being a dungeon master and that sort of thing. Enzel, who's your lawyer for trials? Haha, tricky. Well, it's not that kind of trials, or is it? That may be one of the trials he suffers is a trial, but is it literal? Is it not? I don't know. But as far as lawyering on, for us, I'm going to try to step back from that and go, let's see here. Enzel, with an airborne war brewing, will Runic play a larger role in the story? Can we see him working with airships? So there's this trick to this. Runic is not inherently good or evil, and Runic is also not inherently militant or in any way actually interested in making weapons. He just does it by mistake. So for me as a writer, Runic is my safety net. Runic is immortal, as in the sense that he would theoretically one day die of old age, but Runic can blow himself up. Runic can set himself on fire. Nothing bad is going to happen to Runic, and that's not even a secret. That's not a spoiler. It's just Runic is there for a pressure valve, for comic relief, for sweet family love, for Silent Night, for that dichotomy that exists. The role he would play in the story may be a bigger role for Silent Night, but his role for the war, his role for the first Zomi queuing up, for the first act, Zomi still queuing up, I can't see it being bigger, truthfully.
Oh shit, that I actually pressed it. Whoops, my bad.
Oh, you're fine.
I pressed the wrong thing. My bad. Off I go.
Get off of my lawn.
What was that?
Get off of my lawn. Whippersnapper.
All right. Crystal, where did you get the idea for Velvet being scared of vamponies? From me.
Ta-da!
No, but go ahead. But she did. But go ahead.
Oh, I mean, that's...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought it would be funny. I wrote the thing with her, with Crimson coming in and Velvet weaponizing the bakery, and she thought it was funny, and it just kind of became a running gag. I mean, that one was all me. We inject things into each other's stories by accident and or whatnot, by coming up with ideas. It's one of the perks of writing with a partner. We haven't collaborated in like a direct way in these yet, in that sense, even though that's not true either, but it's mostly because I'm hedging on something that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But anyway, not to be a jerk. No, she got that one from me because I wrote that stupid scene with Silent bringing Crimson in and Velvet going bonkers. Let's see.
But as far as in-universe, where her fear of vampires came from, that would be our in-universe version of Twilight, Eventide. She read it, and because she knows that Crystal bases her stories off of inspiration of reality, Velvet's like, it could be true. You can't prove it's not. And that idea, the idea of the unknown, which actually is an existing pre-existing fear for her, is the fear of the unknown, of change, of things that she can't, fully get her hooves around.
Yeah. And go ahead.
So I retconned, not retconned, but it makes sense with her existing character what he came up with.
Yeah. And the other funny thing that we like about it is Silent Knight's take on it is, if I don't know about them, then they can't exist, so don't worry about it. And that's his argument, because he knows about the things that go bump in the night. All right, let's see here. Ansel Crystal, how long do you plan to carry on your My Little Pony related endeavors? Do you have an approximate idea of when to wind down, or do you just wait for the Brony fandom to die off and dissipate? Are there actually any stallion-liking stallions? Let's 2 questions. Let's do the first one first. Crystal, how long do you plan to go on?
I have so many stories. I cannot imagine running out of them.
For me, it comes down to a couple of things, which I'll speak frankly, because it's some things that Crystal might think sometimes but never say, but I will speak frankly. For me, I do have several stories I want to tell. At least the one more with Silent Night, a little bit more for Sunny, certainly more for Azurite, maybe some things around it. As long as I can do it with interest, for me, I'll do it. If people stop reading, I'm okay with that. If we get down to a really small audience, I'm okay with that as long as I enjoy reading it. But also is the balance of, as long as I enjoy reading it and the response is not that people like it, but are just not abusive. So sometimes, like in memoirs, there was a situation where there was a repeat commentator who was really upset about weird things. And one in particular was, how come Silent Night could teach Luna anything about war? Because she doesn't know anything about war? Well, she's an Alicorn princess. She knows everything about war. Based on what? First of all, this is an AU, and you're telling me my story. Second of all, she's been on the moon for the vast majority of her Alicorn life, and you have no freaking clue what she did before she was an Alicorn. And in this AU, she was a child before. I mean, I'm like, so this pony has been raised for this. You don't know. And so that sort of thing, it gets frustrating that he would come back. And then, we had a problem with a user that was telling me my story before. I had to ban him temporarily, that sort of thing. So there's a level of frustration where, when reached to where the reward of the community is no longer there, then that's when I'll probably pull up stakes and just be done with it. Or, when I can't anymore, at some point, I don't know when, maybe in a week, maybe or not, I might run out of ideas. That's what happens to all good stuff, right? We want to keep writing, people want to keep reading, but let's face it, there's always going to be bad episodes of My Little Pony. There's always going to be bad seasons of My Little Pony. And eventually, after 400 seasons of Law and Order, the show just not that good anymore. But we have no definitive end date. We have some ideas of what to do past trials, but I don't know, I don't know. No time soon. I think we can at least get another year out of us. Let's see. Scroll up. Oh, the second half. Are there actually any Stallion on Stallions? Yes. Div is actually Stallion on Stallion, and Crystal has an uncle that is married to a stallion and has 2 adopted children. Are there any other Stallion on Stallions, Crystal?
I'm trying to think. I do know, so here's a fun little spoiler. I do know that there will at least be a Stallion and Stallion couple in Hopes. They may be small, they may not be. Yes, it's Fiddlesticks.
Dilly also goes both ways. Dilly doesn't discriminate. But I don't know if I'm going to write about Dilly's other relationships. But yeah, both Dilly and Diddle. Actually, Diddle's only a lesbian. Dilly goes both ways, though. Ansel, what spurred your use of airships in the stories? Do you have any models? Final Fantasy 1 from the Nintendo. Ever since a kid playing that game, I have loved airships, to the point where in school I would draw them, and I would get big, giant pieces of paper and draw stickman airship battles for hours on end since I was, that would have to be 7 years old, and I'm 34 now. Ever since I played that game, I have always been fascinated with them. I have always loved them. It's been a big part of Final Fantasy to me. I like the idea of it. I think it makes sense in our setting. Then they actually showed some in the shows. It's huge. That's something so iconic for me. Do I have any airship models? I do not. Crystal and I are, I guess I'm going to use the word weird, but I don't really think it's weird. We are try to be minimalists, even though we don't always succeed. So we don't have a lot of things like that, although we do have things because we are human. But I try not to just have things that are not utilitarian, even though I have a ton of them. But if they made a game that I could play with it, like say if Airship Armada became real, then yeah, chances are I would do it. All right, let's see here. Next question. Very good questions, by the way, this time, y'all. Everybody came prepared. It's exciting.
This is also, I hope it's convenient, or at least not completely inconvenient for you all, because this separate question channel is extremely convenient for us.
Yes, this is much better for us than the last time. Last time was a free-for-all. So, very good. Nalu.
Thank you to the person who suggested it.
Yep. Nalu was smart. Okay. Uh-oh, Crystal, you're in trouble.
Oh, no.
You said you'd write anything for enough cash. My question is, how much would you charge for writing a story where Velvet becomes a Vampony?
Depends. Do you want it to be a story or a minific?
Ooh, valid point. You can find out later if it's a story or a minific. Oh, yeah, actually, if it's a minific, you can...
If it's a minific, it's $100 on our Patreon.
Yeah, not that we're trying to sell, but that's...
I'm completely... Yes, for the record, that I'm just joking.
But that is, yes, that would be the price. Crystal Ansel, do you have any further education in literature, or is this an entirely self-taught hobby? Crystal?
I took 1 semester of trying to get an English degree, and I took Chaucer in the original language, and I ran to an information technology degree. So...
I have no education in literature. I did my undergraduate work is in political science, which of course had a lot of writing, but nothing creative, and my graduate work is an engineering degree. Most of my writing prowess comes from being a role-playing game dungeon master and having never used modules. I only wrote my own games and I only wrote my own settings. So I've been doing world building since I could read. So it's entirely self-taught for me. But obviously I honed my writing skills from my education.
For me, it's just, I've just been trying to write forever, and it's been mostly entirely unsuccessful up until Crystal's Wishes.
I'm pretty excited about this next one. Ansel, what are some example scenes you've planned for Azurite that didn't pan out the way you planned? That's okay. Let's think about. I'm going to try to think of specific examples. I can give you one, but it's also tricky because it's really. I'll explain why in a minute. So one thing. All right. Here's where Azurite came from, and some of you have heard this before at the last one, and now you'll hear it now. Azurite was originally Lavender's little sister. So that was Azurite initially. Also, Azurite was going to be younger, and the way she was going to be introduced was she was going to... One of the ways that I was going to try to help Silent Night make peace with Lavender's death, which obviously, as we all know, I chose not to do that instead, but when I was thinking about this was... he wasn't going to be over it, but Lavender's family and Azurite were going to basically be, sad, but the whole point was they were proud of her for doing her job, and they understood as best they could understood. And Azurite was going to basically say she still wanted to be a royal guard, just like her big sister. So the original first chapter for Three of Hearts is written from the perspective that Azurite is Lavender's little sister. And it is heart-wrenchingly sad. It is emotional and tearful. And after I wrote it and we talked about it, I was like, there is no way I can tell this happy, ridiculous, somewhat sexual story after this because it's just too damn sad. So that didn't work out. I had to write the second, the last third, the second to last third. So the 50 to 75% mark of Hearts, I wrote that about 3 different times because Azurite would just never, she wouldn't cooperate with she was focusing too much on the relationship or too much on the friends. And the whole idea was it was supposed to be a little switcheroo there that everyone thinks that the whole story was just about the relationship, but really it was about relationships do have trouble. This was really about Sunny's trouble with relationship and Azurite learning to have friends. And Azurite wasn't dealing very well with learning to have friends. So I had a lot of trouble with that. Had a lot of trouble with writing her with Velvet initially until it was more clear that, okay, Azurite, you're trying to have friends. So she didn't cooperate there. Sometimes she doesn't cooperate when I want her to do something brave. Sometimes she just wants to talk to Mr. Clockerson, And, they have a special relationship, and I try not to get between them. So that was a few. Let's see here. Yeah, we're fine with unedited, as necessary. Let's see here. I saw my name pop up. Okay. Let's see. Next question. Crystal. Ah, yes. I'll know you'll. Will Frank's identity be revealed in the near future? Not just the future. He wants to know near future.
Hey.
That entirely depends on if Frank exists or not. Which I can neither confirm nor deny, so I cannot answer.
Oh my goodness. She's stonewalling like me. Next question. Crystal, can you tell anything about Hopes without being too spoilery?
I
think you can spoil a little if you like, if you're excited about it.
Okay.
Just be vague.
I'm thinking. Give me 1 second. Let's think.
We're discussing what she can say. Just bear with us a second, everybody.
I'm talking to my lawyer. Okay, so we have discussed it. What I can say is that there will be 3 things that Crystal will be primarily focusing on. The first one will be her relationship with Silent and how that will change as of what we know from the End of Secrets. The second one, which is slightly related to that, but also very, very differently handled, or I don't know how to word it, but that she will have to learn what's going on. Coming to terms with, as Wallflower put it, the life of the wife of the soldier. And finally, the one I'm most excited for, that I'll probably give a little spoiler on, is changing and growing her career. Changing is the right word, but advancing and growing her career.
Which is what she has planned. I will just tell you is, in my opinion, awesome.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, we have done a lot of work on that, and it's very awesome. Next question. Ansel, are venereal diseases a thing for you guys at URL? No, we decided that Ponyland is a bit happier than our world, and there is no pony AIDS, there is no pony herpes. Basically, the only thing that could happen that's bad from sex, if you don't want foals, then you can have foals. That's the only bad potential thing. But the other thing we have is ponies are very responsible, and they have very good education in healthcare, where they are taught about preventative medicine and whatnot. That we have actually had a discussion about this, that pony orphans are very rare, and that there are far more pony parents waiting for foals than there are foals waiting for pony parents. So basically, there's not a lot of unwanted pregnancy. There's not a lot of disease and that whatnot, because it's ponies, y'all. It's got to be a little happier.
It's the magic of harmony.
Yes, exactly. Harmony of genitals. All right. Ansel, Crystal, unrelated question, but do you guys do these Q&As next to each other or in a separate room? So Crystal and I, yep, you can hear her through my mic. Crystal and I have an office that we set up. Both of us, Crystal only works from home, and I work from home at least 1 day a week and often work at night. Our house is set up that we have an office that we share that's dedicated just to our office. We have 2, basically they're like cubicles, like we've set up a real office and they sit face to face. So there's monitors between us, which we occasionally lean around to talk to each other, but we are in the same room. Let's see. Ansel, Crystal, is there a lot of scene inspired by stuff that happened to you? Crystal.
I guess you could say, in some small way, there was a little bit of inspiration of Crystal's first date not going well, because mine was terribad. But I wasn't actively thinking that, but it may have been a subconscious thing. I'd say the most that actually had real-life inspiration from our life into things would have to be the wedding. We borrowed lovingly some things from our wedding. Not all of it. There were things that were unique to them that made more sense for them than we had chosen for ourselves. But there were things we put in that were ours.
I would also say we borrowed Crystal and Silent's relationship is borrowed somewhat from our relationship. A little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. So when I met Crystal and asked her out, I was then, like, before we could even have our first date after we had met, I was deployed for 4 months. So, yay. But she stuck by me, which just tells you that She doesn't have any good sense. But hey, we're married now. Okay, let's see here. This one might be tough. Crystal Ansel, what is the funniest scene that we had to remove from a story, and why did we have to leave it out? Funny doesn't typically get cut, I will say that. Typically, if I cut a scene, it's because it's too sad or too dark or too boring. I'm trying to think if there's something that I've really had a good laugh about that we... Oh, I can think of I know which one for Crystals. It wasn't cut, but it was written as kind of a joke and then was made canon.
We're not talking about that one. My other lawyer is saying no. No.
I can't think of any funny scene that I've cut. Typically, if I write something that makes either Runic or Rosby or Crystal laugh, I leave it in. Like, when I do it by writing, if I get any kind of actual, when they're reading it, they laugh out loud, I put it in. I'll work it in somewhere to relieve tension. So I don't think I've ever cut a funny scene. I don't think. Next question. Crystal Ansel, how much do you keep to the show proper? I find the fandom more gripping than the show itself at this point. Do you feel similar? I'll start with this one if that's okay with you.
Go for it.
Not at all. Do not care. Could not care less. I will get on my soapbox for a second. She's raising her hand.
I am raising my hand. I can't stop doing it. Are we asking how much we keep the stories to the show, or do we ourselves watch the show?
Keep up with the show proper. We've watched every episode multiple times. I'm going to go on my soapbox anyway because I just like to.
I'm sorry, y'all. I tried.
Yeah, sorry. I like the show. I think the latest season's been better. I thought it took a dip there in the middle. We keep up with every episode. We're normally about a week or two behind. As far as keeping the story up with it, we gave up after season 2, and nothing that comes after is going to match it at all. But yeah, the two things that I don't believe in letting stifle my creativity is the quote-unquote canon, and then my favorite, other people's canon. If you want me to ignore you completely, tell me how some other author did it in their story. And I'm sorry if that comes across as rude, but I think you're rude for bringing it up. I think the Cloud Kicker thing of everybody coming in just because she used that name and be like, oh, winning verse. Yeah.
Again, we have nothing against winning verse. I really want to stress that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a different AU, and just because Cloud Kicker is a complete slut whore in her story doesn't mean she's going to be in this one. She's a background pony that Crystal wanted to use. I really dislike that. And that's the one thing. Like, well, such and such did it. Well, such and such is a different author telling a different story in a different AU with different assumptions. That doesn't play here. Sorry, soapbox over. I'm sorry if that makes me seem rude, y'all, but I'm writing my story. You know, I don't go into somebody else's house and tell them how to write theirs. I would be just as upset if somebody went to KCAT and was like, well, Ansel wrote this about alicorns. Who's Ansel? That's what he'd say, because, you know, who is Ansel? Nobody. Okay. For the record, Kristen's got her hand up. Oh. Apparently I swore. I apologize. Okay. Let's see here. No, actually, that was slut whore is factual when we're talking about that.
It's not factual because I don't even think you've read it.
I've read the synopsis that was told to me by the guy that read the thing. Okay. Fair enough. I apologize for swearing, everyone. Okay. Next question.
I just don't want to offend.
Okay. Crystal and
Anyway.
Ansel. If, and that's the big thing, if Crystal and Silent have children, will you write stories for them when time catches up with Crystal and Silent? Would you write that kind of story, Crystal?
I would be interested in writing that story.
Fair enough. I might be interested in writing that story provided that the children were different enough and it wasn't a Dragonlance The Next Generation where the children were not interesting enough at all. They should burn those books. Okay. Happy smiles. No offense if people like those books. I read all of them. All right. Ansel, Crystal. Spreadsheets. I read about that somewhere. Do you have your spreadsheets asset in writing your stories? Do you have many? How versed you in Excel? I am in Excel every day of my life. Pretty much all day. all of our stories have huge Excel planning. We have a giant timeline. Crystal is a programmer that has programmed a special spreadsheet that she can make collapse and go. Oh man. Are we in Excel? Yes, we are in Excel. We own stock in Microsoft just by how much we use Excel. No, but in all seriousness, we do. We use Excel extensively to try to get some semblance of reality and plan our stories and keep them together. We have a lot of Google Sheets, and then as far as our real jobs go, she uses it a decent amount. I literally spend 8 hours a day in Excel every day. It's my everything. And we are at the 1 hour mark. We have an hour left. We'll probably do Q&A for another. Actually, we're 7 minutes past. We'll probably do Q&A for another 23 minutes or so, and then Crystal and I have a couple of announcements and some things that we want to cover, and then if we have more time, we'll do some Q&A. And we're not going to kick everybody out. I just don't know if we're going to be as participatory once the time expires, but we'll go on. Let's see here. Ansel, can I make an Airship Armada board prototype? Because I really want super duper do that and wouldn't be delayed like the musical piece. You can do anything you want. You're an adult. If you want to do that, by all means, make yourself a board. It is loosely based on Star Wars Armada, but don't let that stifle your creativity because you shouldn't. Ansel, will you ever release the first chapter of Azurite being Amethyst? You mean Lavender's sister? I would be interested to see how it would work out. I might. It's kind of rough. I think I have it somewhere. I think I saved it. I don't typically get rid of things, so there is the chance that I might do that. Next question is a kind of silly one. Question, does your lawyer work at Screw'em, Good, and Hart? I'm her lawyer, so I do not. If anyone has more questions, we are down to the last one at the moment, and we still have question and answer time. Crystal Ansel, have you ever met any of your fans in real life, excluding Rosby, Runic, and likewise? Yes. Crystal, take it away.
I believe she's actually in the channel, unless she left. I don't see her name anywhere. Well, yes, we met someone at DragonCon, but unless my screen just isn't showing her, she left. I'm much sad. But it was fun.
Yeah, we did that at DragonCon. No, you're fine in the names. Okay. Next question. Let's see here. Was your wedding closer to Horsey's or Crystal's? Neither. So Horsey had a courthouse wedding, which is what we kind of wanted, but our mothers were both independently brought to tears by the idea of not being there for our wedding, or it being, I don't know. It was weird. That's another story I'm not going to get into. Crystal's wedding was closer to ours, but it was not a spectacle. We had what in our circles is considered a small wedding. By other people's standards, it's not. But, we're from, like, the last wedding we went to was in literally a retired Catholic cathedral with vaulted ceilings and had, 200 guests and tails and full-on things. We had 110 or so guests at our wedding. It was done at a hotel where the reception was also at the hotel. It was cute, quaint, reasonable, and rather enjoyable. You have any thoughts on that, Kristen? Horsey's versus Crystal's wedding?
Rosby, you were there. Do you have any opinions on our wedding? Actually, I don't know if you're still there.
Opinions on what?
Our wedding. Would you... Well, I guess I'm putting you on the spot because I don't know if you've even read that chapter. Never mind.
No.
Yeah, Rosby doesn't actually read my story.
Yep.
I only read when
chapter
Ross
season.
shows up.
This is true. Selective reading. Ansel, what cars do you guys drive? We are very minimalist. I have our newer car because the last car I had was atrocious. If anyone's familiar with the Chevrolet Cobalt, I think they only made it was either 1 or 3 years. It had huge problems. I had it in the shop constantly. I got from that. I drive a 2011 Chevrolet Cruze, which I plan to drive for 200,000 miles if I can. And Crystal has a 2005?
2003?
2003 Honda CRV that's in decent shape. But we drive our cars. So we own both cars. We paid them off, and we drive them to the ground. This would only be my second car ever if I had not, and I'm 34 years old. This would have been my second car ever if the second car had not been such a train wreck. That car was literally in the shop every month until I finally just got rid of it. But yeah. Enzel, why do you love blue so much? I don't know, but I really do. Every wall in our house is some color of blue. Crystal, take it away.
Yeah, every room in our house has some color of blue on the wall, different shade. I also like blue, so it works out. Pretty much almost all of his shirts are blue. He does have some other colors of the rainbow because he does grace them by letting them have a couple slots in the closet. But it's pretty much blue. Some weeks he wears nothing but blue.
I really like blue. I haven't always. I used to be a green man, but I am blue now. I don't know. It's soothing. It's attractive to me. I like blue. It's just I do. Crystal Enzel, are you ever going to bring back the Frost Ponies? If so, or if not, that concept gave me some inspiration I want to run with. Excellent question. So I was planning on doing more with Frost Ponies, and I was planning on doing more with Cobalt. There just wasn't room for it. So what I like to call that is a hook. So he's there, it's there. Crystal used it a little bit for her Frost Pony story. They may come up in trials. I may do something else with them. I want to. I did like it. And again, I did a lot of planning, and I discussed it with Painted Wave a little bit because there was some mutual thought as well along similar lines, and it kind of worked out on something that we wanted to work on together for later. And we've been she and I have been scheming a little bit too on trials, which is fun. But it's one of those things that I had an idea that didn't materialize for the main story, so it just had to be this is an interesting character and an interesting concept that those ponies exist. And I will say there is some reason that those ponies exist, and it is part of my canon. It's just not something that's necessarily going to get out there. It's one of those things that it's not super core, but it's important, and it was important to me that there was a kind of a different pony type, and that there is something more in the North than just the Crystal Empire, and more importantly, that these ponies were not disappeared. And Crystal, I don't know if you had any more plans of using them. I don't think you did, but
no, not really. I used the Frost Ponies to kind of give Crystal one of those moments where she has all the inspiration from the idea of something and the romance of something and reading about it in these stories, and then she kind of meets it, and she realizes that reality isn't always as nice. So it was I just kind of gave her this kind of failed path. Failed isn't, that's a strong word, but y'all know what I mean.
Okay. Let's see here. Angela Crystal, do you believe in Vamponies? I actually have considered that heavily as to whether or not there may actually be real Vamponies, because again, it's a magical setting. I don't want to commit one way or another. I don't have currently any actual Vampony plans, but I don't want to say, yes, I believe in that they'll be in the story, or no, that they're not. I'm going to say that the jury's still out, and it's possible that Vamponies might be a thing, but if they are, they will always, as per everything, they will have a Quill and Blade twist, and they won't be like any standard, because I can never do anything exactly like the other stuff, but they probably won't sparkle. All right, Crystal, Ansel, do you guys know any other languages, including programming other languages? Crystal knows several programming languages because that's her primary profession. I speak the languages of network equipment, which is annoyance. But neither of us are fluent in another language, although we have been eyeing the idea of picking up French before we start traveling abroad. I knew a pathetically small amount of German from when I traveled to and from a lot. A pathetic amount of Spanish because I wanted to pick that up because I thought that would be a good idea. Kristen speaks a little Polish because I'm Polish, but I don't speak Polish because... Let's see here. What programming languages do you know? You know so many.
So I've got... The main one I use is PHP. That's what I use in my current job. I've used ASP.NET. I've also used Ruby. I don't know. Most people don't really count JavaScript /jQuery, but I'm also very fluent in those.
Okay. Oh, Rosby's bombing us with a really
I
difficult
see
question.
that.
And it's a serious question.
It is serious. It's just difficult. If you had to write each other's stories, what would be the easiest and or hardest aspects for you? Can I go first?
Sure, go for it.
So we each have our strengths and weaknesses, right? Crystal writes better dialogue than I do. And love stories have a subtler nuance to them. And I write direct, and typically I write pointedly unless I'm being silly. I think I would have a hell of a time. I'm cussing tonight. I'm sorry, y'all. I would have a hard time writing the level of dialogue she does. The other thing is, I probably would have just put Velvet and Crystal together because I think they're the cutest couple. I really do. I'm not going to lie. I understand they're siblings, though. I mean, I really do. I don't want to exacerbate this, but I think they're cute together. Maybe they get over the whole sibling thing and do a little incest or something. But I think that would be it. I just don't write dialogue as well as Crystal does, and that's just the truth of the matter. I think her expressioning, like how the ponies have expressions and whatnot, is a little better than mine too. So that's where I would struggle. Crystal?
For me, it would be on my side of things. My struggle is the overarching plots and weaving little plots into bigger plots. Those I'm not very good with that. But probably the hardest part for me would be the military aspects and the soldier aspects and the guard aspects, because I constantly have to look and be like, how does that work again?
Yeah, these are facts. Will you write more Rosby, like a 100,000 Rosby only story?
Excellent question, might I say.
Uh-huh.
Also,
Sounds
I'm sorry if I'm
bias
loud.
in there. You're always loud. Every time you talk, you're loud. I don't know. It takes a certain mood to write Rosby. Like, I have to be cranky to get his tone right.
Also, it would require you talking to me more about it, and I don't know if I could do it.
I don't know if you could do it. But I will say I was super, super happy with the first Rosby minific. When I sent that to Rosby and was like, how does this look? And the best part was when he quoted a part and was like, if you could add this, I think it'd make it better. And then he went to the next paragraph down, and I had done it, and I was so happy with myself. I'd basically written it exactly how he suggested I write it, and I was so happy. So apparently I can write Rosby. I am physically capable of it. But 100,000 words of that cranky little bitter pony. I don't know if I could do it.
All right. Ansel Crystal, were any of your characters, aside from Crystal and Velvet, bullied as a foal? So I will take this one first. So Silent Night and Winterspear would obviously not be, because their father would expect them to crush whatever pony was bullying them. And I'm not going to say that didn't happen, especially when it comes to Silent Night. Azurite was teased a lot because she's so tiny. I don't know if we call that bullying, because again, bullying's got a connotation where it could be like over in excess. Definitely teased, for sure. Sunny, not so much, because Sunny just wouldn't care. So someone may have tried for Sunny, but she would just be like, okay, and walk off. Iridescence, no, because she had so much money, her father's bodyguards would just remove the foals from anything. I'm trying to think who might be. Definitely Azurite.
Horsey.
Yeah, Horsey was bullied, right?
Horsey was bullied until she kind of latched onto Golden. And that would have continued if you... I'll put a pin in the Horsey thing. I guess that'll count as later announcements. But her parents.
Yeah.
So as if we're considering bullying to be between other foals or with other, adults.
Well, yeah, and that's a valid point too. I mean, Stratus bullied the hell out of Winterspear and Silent. I mean, really, like beyond bullied, abuse. So, yeah, most of them, I guess, in some form or another, I guess we'll go with instead of the no. All right, coming down to about 8 minutes, so get in your final questions, and then we're going to go to announcements, and if we don't run over, we'll do some of the other stuff. Ansel, was Cobalt named after your deadly vehicle? No, actually, it was not, although that is hilarious. So Cobalt two things. Originally, Cobalt was based on a NPC from which I take my screen name. So he actually was originally written as Anselthane in it, but then I was like, I don't want to bother with a quote-unquote self-insert, even though he and I are nothing the same. So I changed it to Cobalt because I was like, he's going to be blue, and Cobalt's a color of blue, so blue. He's just Blue Thane. That's basically what it comes down to. I just don't want to call him blue. So I like the word Cobalt. It's a neat word. It's a dark blue. I have a ring like that. It's good. Let's see here. Ansel Crystal, if either you do write a Rosby fic, will you consider the idea that Rosby was raised by wild pigeons?
I will have to consult with the owner. Owner?
We're already in talks that something about this will be included somehow in some form.
Okay. Well, currently the minifics do not contradict it, so anything is canon at this point.
And I've already sent you messages on Facebook regarding this issue, so.
Oh dear.
I'll get the legal team. All right. Ansel Crystal, what is your favorite question asked of your characters on Quill and Bladecon? So on our weekly Q&A. I thought the one about Azurite's sword was pretty funny. The first time somebody asked Mr. Clockerson a question, I thought that was hilarious. Now it's just kind of silly because I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep typing TikTok and stuff, but all right. The first time I did it, I kind of wrote out what he said. When they asked him what the meaning of life was, I mean, I basically wrote it out and then translated ticks and talks poorly because I'm not going to try to write a clock language. But he basically said something to the effect of that, what's important in life. Life is all about good food, good friends, good family, and not letting things stress you too much and whatnot. Mr. Clockerson's pretty deep. But I like the ones that make us think a little bit, that don't lead us or aren't too spoilery. I like getting guard questions. If it's something I can answer, I don't mind that because I like share anything that I can share the world. The ones I struggle with the most is, how does blank make you feel? And then, because then I have to put myself in that character for a minute without being in a story, which I'm good at, but it's kind of tricky. So that's for me. Any thoughts, Crystal?
I enjoy answering any question that's for Lovey-Dovey. She's just so much fun.
Yes, Lovey.
Especially if it's like some of the questions kind of get a little silly. She can answer silly questions.
All right. Ansel, will Silent head to the Griffin Kingdoms quickly in Trials? Yes. So there is a bit of a time gap, but in the first chapter, he is already there, and the Griffin Kingdoms are getting proper names, which I will then retcon throughout the whole thing, actually, because I was just being lazy. I'm not going to lie. It was one of those things where, I think people forget when you're doing a serial and you release 2 chapters a week, you don't get the planning and the naming. So I think when I originally wrote in Memoirs, the Northern and Southern, I was just like, okay, and I'll fill this in later. And I didn't. And then I was kind of like, well, maybe it's one of those things where most people in Europe can't point out where every state is in America, and most people in America can't point out where every country is in Europe. And, sure. And then it kind of stuck. And then later I was like, oh my goodness, people are confusing this one and that one. And so, it's just one of those things, So yes, to answer your question, Silent Night will be in a Griffin Kingdom in the very first chapter of Trials. There will be a time skip, a small one between Secrets and Trials, which we'll see the start of in the epilogue and then immediately in Trials. That because they have to, it takes a lot to to mobilize the entire army and raise 30,000 Royal Guard volunteers. So the army goes and, quickly, and then the Royal Guards follow shortly after. I believe. I haven't written it yet, so if that changes, don't quote me. Ansel, if money wasn't an issue, what car would I get? Assuming money wasn't an issue, including on the maintenance side, probably a Rolls-Royce Phantom. That would probably be it. Not the newer ones, about the models they were making about 5 years back, I would say, as far as that goes. Like if literally money was no issue and I didn't care if anything happened to it. Otherwise, if I could have had more money when I bought my car, I'm really into the Chevy Malibu, like the newer models. I think they're nice mid-size sedans, and I think that's what I'd do. I assume this is a silly question. Crystal, have you ever accidentally? ? Don't know.
Probably. I don't know.
Okay. And now an existential question. This will be the last 2. Crystal, if you ever met Crystal the pony, what would you talk about?
We'd probably talk about writing and romance. I think we could talk for hours about that. And then I'd ask her about like all the proper stuff because I honestly don't know all that. I had to look it up every time and have her teach me so I could forget it the next day.
And somehow it would end in a bloodbath.
What?
Oh,
I'm
no.
not that bad at fancy.
I personally hold the fact that the ponies are tiny and that they're like bigger cats. So like if Crystal the pony was in our house, she might be 2 feet tall. Like that's my opinion. So when you see the art of people like snuggling them and stuff, that's how I feel. They're little. They'd get lost without us. And last question, and then we'll do some announcements. Do you have to ask to be allowed to carry a non-issue weapon in real life? I don't know what the current regulations are, but yes, I do know the weapon you are issued is the weapon you will use. Now, that is not true for every unit. Special operations, special forces have much more leeway, but for the average rank and file soldier, you will be issued. I think they're using an M4 right now, and they were using 9mm Berettas, which everyone hated because they don't have any stopping power. I don't even know if in the modern army you can get, if you can even do that. Someone that may have been more recent that's currently in service, I have to know. I know in my dad's time, especially in Vietnam, because in Vietnam it was kind of a free-for-all. If you wanted to bring something, they were a little bit more leeway. Some of them might actually carry a backup weapon. That's the thing, but they're pretty strict about weapons and weapons control. People think that soldiers run around. This isn't judgy. I'm sorry. Sometimes people believe that soldiers run around with weapons a lot, but that's actually not the case, especially stateside, which is why you ask like Fort Bragg, how could so many soldiers on a military base end up shot? Weapons are very secured and constantly monitored. So the idea of you having one that wasn't yours that you're carrying, but at the same time, very many of our service people have concealed carry. They have own their own weapon. They might have that, but I'd have to look or ask some others. But yeah, okay. So we're going to stop questions for now. We're going to do our announcements. If they don't take long, fine. We'll answer some more questions. If they do, fine. I want to start with the book. Then we're going to talk Horsey. Then we're going to talk about a big project that we're working on behind the scenes that we just want to talk very loosely about without doing too much. And I think then that should do the time. Here we go. Okay, so what did I say we talk about first? Did I say book? I hope I said book.
It's book now.
It's book now. Okay, so I lost the link. Do you have the link?
To what?
Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to share something with you all here. And give me just a second to pull it up.
I've been told to say something entertaining. A drum and a cymbal fall off a cliff.
Well, if we're going to follow the past one, I think now's the time when we all say, sing, Crystal, sing.
No, that person's not here. You didn't have to start that.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
Oh, yeah, that is a good point Lord Legion brings up. That, yes, because of the bullet requirements and whatnot. I don't think you can anymore. I think it's, at this point, it's not allowed. Okay. Now, to start with, I'm going to link a spreadsheet for you all to see. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may not. These are what we're looking at costs for the print books. And you can pretty much assume that any Quill and Blade book is going to be about the same. We're going to pilot with memoirs, but this is what we're looking at. I believe in full transparency, so I want everybody to see what we're looking at. There's no secret here. But the more we can order, the cheaper they are, right? So I have made the decision that we're doing hardbacks and hardbacks only. We're not going to be doing a 2 print run thing because I've done that before and it's kind of a pain. We have Painted has agreed to the budget. She thinks it's reasonable, which is great. And I'm still talking to the professional editor, but if we don't have to, we don't have to. We'll go when we go. So tentatively speaking, my personal estimate, and of course you people continuously prove me wrong and undervaluing us, but I believe we will have an interest in about 30 books. That's all I can imagine. I think it's going to be about 30. So if you look on the spreadsheet, 30 books without professional editing is probably going to be around $45 per person. That's kind of where we're at. That's what I imagine it to be. So that's your price point. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. Now, with that said, we are going to. I have a concern of people will tell you that they want to do something, and then when it comes time to collect the money, the 42 people that said that they were going to do it, only like 25 of them come back. So again, we're not trying to make a profit. We're not trying to do this, but I want people to commit if they're going to, and this is the only way I know how to do it. So what we're doing now, tentatively, is we are now taking deposits on memoirs. The way this works is you purchase a nothing for $15, and you purchase the nothing for $15, so that lets me know how many people are actually interested. And we're not, and yes, people are going to prepay before I order. That's for sure. But the thing is I don't know how much to charge people. So my plan is we're going to do a $15 deposit that's non-refundable once we pass a certain threshold. Right now, it's perfectly refundable. But if I have 30 people that pre-order and have put down $15, I can feel relatively safe telling people it's going to be $45 versus me saying, okay, everybody prepay, but not know the price. So if you are interested, you can find the quote-unquote store there, but it's not a store. And there's no worries. We're taking the $15 deposit, and the way it is whatever the final price is, we will take $15 off of it for you. You'll get a promo code. So if you want one, this is the method to do it. The more people that prepay, the cheaper it's going to get because I'll know. I don't know all of our costs yet, but that's what we're doing. So it's there if you want it. It's not if you don't. It's not going to go away anytime soon because the second edition I'm currently done with my revisions through chapter 27, although Crystal pointed out some mistakes I made, so I have to fix that. I anticipate being done with my revisions by the end of not this coming week, but the week after. From there, it'll go to Crystal. So Crystal will do a very long, exhaustive work through it as well. At that point, it may or may not go to a professional editor. I don't know. She is really excited about working on it and may cut us a deal that I can't refuse. And if it pushes the price up, I'll probably just do that out of pocket and it won't be passed on to y'all. So then I can definitely say it's not a for-profit because at that point it's definitely at a loss. So, at that point, no one can argue that we're selling things for profit because it'll be at a loss. And then Painted will be doing the cover. Then this is for memoirs. This one is for memoirs. Crystal's will also be done, but we're doing memoirs first. And also Crystal's has to be 2 books. It just can't be 1 book. It's impossible. Or impossible is not the right word. It's impractical. But this is for memoirs. So we will be taking this, and as we get the pre-orders, I'll put it into the spreadsheet so people will know. If you keep an eye on the spreadsheet, you can see how many orders there are and whatnot, and that's how that goes. But if anyone has any questions on the costs or concerns, that's where they are. But this will be the 4th book that I've physically printed. I'm very familiar with this process. It's a pain in the butt, but I've done it, and I have no concerns. We've shipped out thousands of things to people. It'll get done, for sure. So that's the first thing. That's the announcing of the actual book being available for deposits. All right, so that covers that. What's the timeline when it comes to deposits? Okay, so basically it looks like this. We know for a fact it will take me at least 2 more weeks to do my pass. Then I want Crystal to have 2 weeks. And I want Painted to have as much time as she feels is comfortable to do the cover plus for us to do tweaks. So I'm going to call that the month we're talking about plus an additional at least month. So that gives her at least 2 months. And if she needs more, we're going more because I'm not going to rush her. We're not going to rush it, and it's going to be right. So if you may get a deposit tonight, you could be waiting a while. I will be cutting off refunds once Painted's done. So once the cover art is done, and then there will be no more refunds because at that point we're locked in. If you back out at that point, I'm sorry, that's your deposit and it's going to go towards the book and somebody else is going to catch a deal. We're also looking at, like I said, the professional editor. I don't know how long she's going to take, and I'm not going to try to rush her. But I'm also, if her quote's like more than 2 months, then I'm not going to do it, because I'm not going to wait on that. I'm ready to get this out and get it in people's hands. So we will definitely, the deposit period is definitely going to be the next month. And then after that, it's probably going to go into the non-refundable deposit period. And then right before I order, I'll have a final price. I will then put out the actual purchase in the same place as this, where you will make your final purchase. Anyone that doesn't loses their deposit, which will help us offset the fact that we ordered you a book that's $45 for basically $15 out of pocket, and we go from there. So hopefully everyone thinks that's fair, but truthfully, I don't want to end up stuck with 30 copies of Memoirs of a Royal Guard that no one wanted. And that's why also, if you look to kind of show people what we're dealing with, I put the total cost of the project on there so people could sort of see. Okay. So any questions about books? Will there be notification of when you're printing your story? Yes. Blog. If you don't follow quillandblade.com and you don't follow blog on Fim, that you're going to miss stuff probably. And like I said, I do all my announcing on Fim for the most part, and I'm not trying to get followers. I really don't give a rat's tail about how many the number is. But really, like, if you want to keep up with our stuff, guys, you really need to follow me and check my blog now and then. Because I don't like sending emails. I'm not going to bother you. But either, watch quillandblade.com or follow me on Fim. Follow Crystal too, because she normally CCs anything I do. But that's that. Any other questions on the books before we move on to Horsey?
I will put a note out there when he said following the site. So for the 3 people that were actually following the subscriptions for Quill and Blade, that plugin was trash, and I am so sorry.
That too. We are only doing a hardcover. Even though the spreadsheet shows other things, it's mostly just to show that a soft cover really isn't that much more affordable. So if we look, I mean, really, it's like $10 to $15 more gets you a hardcover, and so I'm only printing hardcovers, and we will only print hardcovers. The other thing is, and this isn't meant to be a jump in on it, guys, because again, we're not making profit, but there is a high possibility that we are only doing this once per book. And like I said, we'll sign them all, we'll number them all, but it is unlike, like, we are not one of those, like, we are not Fallout Equestria. So there is very, very, very high likelihood that each printing will be the only printing whatsoever. We may do further orders later on, but at that point, you're looking at, if I have to do single orders, your price will be substantially more. And I'm not saying I won't do it. I'm just saying you will pay out the nose, is the short answer. But I also am loath to do it because it's not fair, because everyone else's split was predicated on an actual split. So, if you were a part of the initial order, you paid a percentage of the art cost, the editing cost, everything else. And someone that orders later, well, they didn't take that percentage off. And then now I have to figure out what's the difference. And then I charge them less, which isn't fair, but I charge them more because it's one book. And then we got to figure that out because we're not trying to make profit. And then if I make any money, I've got to give it to a charity. So the short answer is if you want one, figure out a way to get it, because I don't know that I'm going to deal with the second print, unless we do an entire something. What will be the time gap between my book and Crystal's book? Okay. A lot, because we have to come up with the exact split for Crystal's. Then we have not even started the second edition on Crystal's. There will not be let me finish one question before I move on. Hang on a second. There is a while, because we have not started the second edition of Crystals. We've got to break it into, we have to talk to Painted about after. I don't want to quote her on another cover until she does this one and goes, wow, I really, really feel like $150 was a total screw on me. So until she does one and figures out how much work it is and how much effort, it's unknown. So assume that if we're 2 months out from Memoirs, we are very, very many months out from wishes. Next one. An omnibus or combined book. No. Let me just go with no. Not because I don't want to do it, but because most printers you work with have a page count maximum. So for us to do that, we'd be looking at doing like 8 font, and it would be ridiculous. So the printer I have chosen to use, and I'm pleased with, and will be using. And again, I appreciate if people make suggestions, but again, remember, folks, this will literally be the 4th book I've done, and I've worked with at this point 3 different printers, and I'm comfortable with the one I'm going to use. And as long as they continue to produce what I want, which I don't know, we'll see, because I'll be ordering at least just one of these books in advance before I do the full run. The maximum pages we can do, I believe, is just under 800. There's absolutely no way I could even fit all I can't fit even just memoirs and secrets into one book without significantly making it impossible to read. So no omnibus. Or I could do a huge book. Let's just go with don't miss. If you want a physical book, don't miss this one. Let's just go with that. Okay. Any final questions on that before we move on to Horsey? Okay. Crystal is now going to take over and discuss Horsey.
So, when I originally did Horsey's Ponyville Adventures, I kind of just planned for it to just be a built-in people who already like Horsey would want to read it. Except I published it, which means other people can read it. Funny how that works, isn't it? So I've gotten some varying feedback on how Horsey's story is from an outsider's perspective and a new person's perspective. And I haven't exactly enjoyed it. So the plan is I'm going to be renaming it to The Princess in the Mirror, and it's going to start way back in the Wishes chapter of the same name. And we're going to get a whole bunch more Horsey. I'm also going to change it to first-person perspective because I want to play with that. But I do want people to kind of know that in advance. I imagine all y'all that are here, this isn't as much of a concern because if you're here, you probably like our stories. And if you're also happen to be following Horsey's story, you'll probably not mind the shift. Because the primary reason I want to rename it is Horsey's Ponyville Adventures kind of gives the implication that it's going to be very a pony on the ground perspective of main 6 events, which I'm going to be kind of steering clear from. Like obviously the big events like Nightmare Moon, Discord, those are very big. Yeah, there'll be a public service announcement. I'll do a blog before I rename it and kind of basically quote unquote relaunch it. So for people that are following it that aren't y'all, that don't really care about our stories, that we're in it for the main 6, so they can be informed that the stories go in a completely different direction, which I'm really excited about. I've started writing a little bit for it, and I'm kind of really excited because it's going to delve very, very deeply into Horsey and who she is and how she grew up and all of her little struggles. So if you like Horsey, please don't miss it.
Any questions for Crystal on Horsey?
Yay!
Okay, so the big announcement I would say that we're doing is we're not going to say too much because we're not anywhere near it, but hang on, she's groaning.
No, I was giving it an emphatic agreement of we are not ready.
Okay. Yes. So we will be opening what we would like to call a third front. There will be a new protagonist coming in a new story that will be co-written, not just collaborated, but literally co-written by Crystal and I in the not near future. But there is a ton of planning that has gone into this, and I mean a ton. It'll be on Crystal's account. It'll be on Crystal's account, but this will be our first one that we've actually really, really written together. We've worked on stuff in the past and have done very well with it. It's just no one cared to read our stories. But we have actually got so much planned for this already because when Crystal presented the idea, she loved it. Rosby loved it. Painted loved it. I loved it. And she and I spent hours during our numerous trips this year to and from Georgia. Yes, you know about this one, I thought. Didn't you
It's
talk
the one
to?
I was telling you everything about.
Yeah. So this one again, but I will say I will let Crystal hint at whatever she wants to hint at. But I will say it's definitely different than everything we've done as far as. No. Anyway, suffice to say, it will be co-written. It has a lot of interesting. It will be in universe, and it will open a third front of protagonist. Crystal, anything you want to say?
I'm trying to think. I am super excited for this one. It's the one that I said was going to be a venture into adventure. I didn't even plan to say it like that, and I'm very happy with how that came out. But pretty much everyone that has been clued in on the story so far has reacted how Painted is reacting right now. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, and I had a thought of. I will say I have not personally seen what we're planning on FIM yet.
Yes, Rosby has been instrumental in doing research. I think we have like 12 pages in Google Docs of 13 of just like notes and research.
Yeah, we're definitely set up. So that's coming later this year, and we're really excited about it.
And fun fact, it all started because I was car sick while we were driving back and forth on all our trips, and I was lying in the back seat of the car staring at the ceiling trying to think of anything else, and I came up with a story.
Fact. So we are going to be using Lulu is who we're going to print with. That has been my selection. They have a good product, and their hardcovers are a reasonable price without having any kind of setup fees or annoyances. I've worked with other companies in the past of doing hardcovers, and they are pretty good, but I don't want to go that route, and it's very tricky. But yes, previously, anytime I've had to do hardcovers has come a long way since the last time I printed a book. There was a lot of effort versus a softcover, and Lulu looks like it takes that out of the thing, and and I've had some good experiences. So yeah, they're and like I said, Wing says he's had good experiences. Well, he said he used them in the past. I hope that means good. There you go. So that is who we're going to use, which you can go check all the prices there too. Just like I did, but they're in the spreadsheet. So, okay, well, that's our big announcement. You heard it here first. Look for that mid-year. I mean, the thing is we're pretty excited about it, but we're also excited about meeting our obligations. So it's something that we're gonna be writing on the side of our others. But we're this year we're taking and I guess we'll call this where the stories aren't going to suffer this year based on deadlines. I'm not saying we're going to reduce our frequency, but again, when you're trying to write as complex stuff as we are, and you have to turn it around, every 3 days, your story can suffer in some ways. And, as I'm going back through to do my second edition, I'm like, wow, now that I can sit here and think about this, I would have actually done this a little differently or slightly differently or changed this or changed that. So, like I said, we're committing to our normal schedule, and but we're not going to suffer this year. So this new story, we won't be letting the other story suffer, so it might take some time.
I'm also still, I promise, for those of you who have read the Lovey Dovey story, I am working on that sequel. I promise. I have it outlined. I just, with everything else, it's hard to find time for everything. Did I?
Yep, and I'm working a little bit on. I'm kicking around ideas for Azurite 3.0. I think I'm dumping the Azurite prequel. I couldn't make it work in a way that I was interested in it. So I'm not saying that it's gonna never come out, but I just wasn't feeling it.
I don't know if that was a joke, but I do actually have it outlined. I do have the cover for Lovey Dovey and the Uncertain Stallion done.
Okay. So that's our time for the most part. We will be hanging out for a little bit. No one's obligated to stay,